Hideaki Anno's Neon Genesis Evangelion tells the story of a young man, Shinji Ikari, piloting a giant robot along with several others in order to save the world from strange creatures known as angels. Sounds like a pretty typical robot cartoon, right? Not so much. NGE is considered one of the most unique and influential series to come out of Japan due to its highly unorthodox storytelling and the messages Anno conveys about identity and self-worth. Before we can understand why Neon Genesis is such a unique show, first we have to look at kids piloting robots in other mecha anime. There are many traits shared between these shows, from common themes to character traits. The hero, usually quiet yet brave on the battlefield, pilots a giant robot with exceptional skills to take down enemies. The battles often take place on land or in space, with characters from the hero's group fighting against multiple war factions. Female characters are split into either tough assassins/tacticians or characters of regality. They often serve as a romantic interest for the hero or a drive to keep fighting. They are also often sexualized by the fans, even if this was not their original intention in the show. Oh yeah, real clever there, Mr. Crab. You're just gonna snip off her bathing suit there. I gotcha. That's kind of gross. Yuck. There is also heavy reliance on the power of friendship, if you will, with the hero and his friends working together and relying on one another's hopes and strength to finish a battle. Okay, so when Neon Genesis began airing in about 1995, it did follow these tropes in the first 10 or so episodes. Shinji and his fellow pilots, Asuka and Rei, battled the angels in a monster of the week fashion, working together and learning more about each other. There was humor, cute pet characters. Wait. Is that a penguin? What is that even? Okay, never mind, forget it. And there was also fan service, which usually involved Shinji awkwardly staring at one of the girl's boobs and then turning his head away because he felt embarrassed, or maybe because he realized he was being a pervert. Despite all this, Anno, the creator, leaves clues early on that NGE's story is taking a slightly different path than its predecessors. For one, Shinji, although he may be able to pilot an Eva, is a scared, sad little boy. The courage he gains to fight an angel often takes a lot of coaxing or yelling from his co-workers. He is constantly stepped on by his father and many of the other characters. He has little self-confidence, is often awkward and passive, and when confronted with his issues surrounding who he is and what his place in the world means, he tends to curl away from them. Literally. I mean, look at all these different versions of the fetal position he's in. That's a lot. Also, the idea of fighting with the power of friendship begins to deteriorate as peers withhold information from one another, and the pilots begin to grow apart due to their differences. The female characters also heavily divulge from the usual romantic persona. Rei is a near emotionless girl who talks very little and at times seems to totally forget the kindness that Shinji expresses towards her. Asuka, on the other hand, is strong and feisty. She states multiple times that Shinji is weak and stupid. And while her tough girl character is one that eventually becomes a romantic source in other anime, she is subdued in episode 22 by an angel's attack, which forces her to relive her mother's abuse and suicide until she is reduced to a near comatose state. Light-hearted, hopeful series? Not really. Above all else, Hideaki Anno uses NGE to discuss how people identify themselves in a world where competition and fear seem to drive us away from our goals. The angels are protected by an AT field, which stands for anti-terror field. Ultimately, this is explained as being both a physical and metaphorical barrier that everyone possesses. It is essentially created by the fear that we will be hurt by the people we love. Anno uses the mythos of the series to show how it is difficult for people to be comfortable with themselves and others and let their guard down. This can also be expressed in how Asuka portrays herself as headstrong and stubborn, but in reality is terribly afraid of being ignored, which is showed in her mental breakdown. Author Susan Napier is quick to point out in her analysis of the show that the last 2 episodes of the series are dedicated entirely to delving into the psyche of each Eva pilot. She says that these episodes are stripped of the high-tech gadgetry and the colorful visuals, and a form of interrogation proceeds to be carried out as Shinji asks himself, or is asked by an unseen voice, probing psychological questions. Every character has 2 sides to them, the side they show their peers and the side they don't wish for others to see. This dual identity tends to get in the way of Shinji and the others communicating well. Even the robots, who are typically used to help the main characters identify themselves, reject their pilots if their sync rate is too low. which causes a lot of this and this. Similar to how Takashi Murakami's early work shows a multiple range of cultures that Japanese society has attempted to absorb, like the Tamiya model company's overbearing American influences, the identities of the pilots are smothered and hidden under the machine. In order to feel good about themselves, they need the Eva to help identify themselves. If they cannot pilot it, they consider themselves worthless. This commentary on identity and closing oneself off from the rest of the world stems from several things. For one, Anno suffered from depression in the months leading up to the creation of the show and during the production. It's very possible that the helplessness he felt from his depression led him to have these particularly grim views on self-identification. This is supported by the fact that Anno regards the different characters in the show as all parts of his personality. It is interesting to note that Neon Genesis Evangelion was airing when the sarin gas attacks occurred. Anno had to change his original plans for certain episodes due to the similarities between an upcoming attack in the show and the recent attack on Japan. In an interview with Azuma Hiroki, a friend of Anno's and someone who also worked on the series, there was deep discussion about the connection between Am's behavior and the themes in Neon Genesis Evangelion. Hiroki says this: I mentioned to Anno that such abstract characteristics of the enemy are very close to the conception of Am as an enemy, poison gas, which he admitted. He also admitted the similarity of Evangelion with Am. Nevertheless, it is too simple to conclude that Anno was sympathetic with Am. He empathizes the closedness and exclusiveness of this group. They lost any contact with reality. In Anno's view, this again is very close to the situation of anime fans. So to Anno, the isolation felt within the cult's community can also be mirrored in the infamous otaku culture. Otaku are known for being withdrawn from the rest of the world and obsessed with animated characters, mostly female, to help them escape reality. While Neon Genesis was originally supposed to be a whimsical and intrinsic series, Anno was disheartened by how quickly the fans began to sexualize the female characters. Figurines, posing scantily clad, body pillows, the works. Anno was quoted saying, "It's strange that Evangelion has become such a hit. All the characters are so sick." And he's not wrong. His show has a quiet and withdrawn character, much like a shut-in, and lots of fan service, commenting on the obsession with young girls. Anno was trying to get those watching his show to wake up, to see that this behavior they exhibit is wrong, and takes away from the experience of watching a show that could be so much more than just large chests and blushing cheeks. However, he began to realize as the episodes progressed that he was receiving the complete opposite reaction, which made him more and more frustrated to the point where he would psychologically rip characters apart. Anno wanted his viewers to be responsible for their actions, and although he may not have driven the message home at first, it is clear looking on the series now that he stayed true to his intentions, even when the final 2 episodes got him death threats. Even after the series was over, Anno would still go on to try and make fans realize his choices in the show were for a purpose. NGE would go on to have several remakes, one of them currently updating, labeled as Neon Genesis Evangelion Rebuild. And more importantly, NGE got its own movie, which redid the last 2 episodes the way Anno thought the fans wanted it. Which really means that Anno took everything to extremes again to show how escaping your problems and isolating oneself from reality is bad. So what began as a show hiding behind the stereotypical motifs of robot anime turned into a commentary on the struggles of identity, as well as a warning to those participating in the otaku lifestyle to take responsibility and change their behavior. There are many other theories about NGE that have been circulating for years, so if you're ever curious about the other types of ideas people have about this show, it shouldn't be too hard to find them.